Welcome back. Well, the start of a new school year, a massive new group of young children starting grade 1 this year. You'll know them. They're the ones with the brand new shoes. But already only 40% of children who actually start grade 1 end up writing matric 12 years later. We have such a high dropout rate as a country. Huge concerns that after COVID-19 that dropout rate is getting much higher. Rahima Essop is the spokesperson of the Zero Dropout campaign. Rahima, good afternoon to you. You've done a lot of research in this area. What kind of issues lead to children dropping out of school? Why is it that we have such a low pass-through rate?
Well, good afternoon and good afternoon to your viewers, Stephen. You know, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, 4 out of 10 learners in South Africa would drop out of school before completing matric. And you ask a very crucial question. Why? What makes a learner more likely to drop out? Is it poverty? Is it geography? Is it disability? And also, how does a learner's gender shape their experience of school? Now, these are all fundamental questions in the campaign against school dropout, because if we are able to understand the drivers of dropout, we can then roll out effective prevention methods. What we do know through research is that there is no single risk factor. In fact, there are up to 40 different risk factors that need to be taken into consideration, and that dropout is not a singular event. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of disengagement in which a learner is pushed or pulled away from school. It's a convergence of a myriad of risk factors. And these factors were exacerbated during COVID-19, as we saw when the NIDS-CRAM results, that's the National Representative Survey, those results showed us just how education particularly was affected.
Is there a big gender difference? You talk about gender. Do we see, you know, in many countries you find when you get to tertiary institutions, there are far more young women than young men. What do we see here?
Well, that's really interesting, and we will be releasing a report later this month that looks at the gender differences in dropout and what are some of the gender differentials that drive dropout. What we do know is that in South Africa, the repetition and dropout rate differs from the sub-Saharan African region. What many people might not realize is that more girls are completing school and passing matric than boys. In fact, boys are almost twice as likely to repeat a grade and to drop out. Now, this is a problem that the Department of Basic Education is well aware of. In fact, in its own strategic documents, it talks about the need for improvement strategies to pay careful attention to the high rates of dropout among boys in particular.
So what do we need to do then? I mean, do we need to start with the grade 1s now? I mean, do we need to have interventions at a much later stage? I presume we need some sort of continuous intervention.
Well, this is a systemic problem and we need a holistic approach, which is why I mentioned we need to understand the drivers of dropout. It needs to be a whole of society approach. It cannot just be the basic education sector acting alone. There are a number of things that need to happen and that could happen if we start doing it now. For instance, we have spoken about making dropout a KPI, a key performance indicator, in the same way that we use the matric results as an indicator of the sector's performance. We need to make dropout a KPI as well. We also need accurate and complete big picture data that can indicate trends and patterns and that can inform policies. Schools must be also capacitated and supported to collect and to monitor learner-level data for the purposes of preempting and preventing dropout. And we often speak about early warning systems. These are indicators that would identify learners that are at risk of dropping out. Usually these indicators suggest disengagement, they are academic performance, chronic absenteeism, as well as behavioral issues. Now, if schools are capacitated to implement these early warning systems, we will be able to, from an early age, you spoke about grade 1, identify learners that are at risk of dropping out or who are showing signs of disengagement. And finally, we need to strengthen psychosocial support in schools, as well as accelerated learning, particularly because COVID-19 and the lockdown has exacerbated learning losses, particularly among primary school learners.
Rahima Essop, spokesperson of the Zero Dropout campaign. Do appreciate the time. Thanks very much indeed.